How to hold myself together when answers didn't come. How to build a life without asking too many questions. Now, I was learning something else. How to stay open even when the truth was heavy. That lesson felt harder, but it also felt more alive. One afternoon, as we sat together on a bench, my father said, "You don't owe me your trust." I looked at him. "I know," I replied, "but I can choose it." That choice felt powerful. Trust, given slowly, deliberately, became something we built together. I no longer felt the need to test him. I no longer waited for him to disappear. When he said he would call, he did. When he said he would come, he showed up. Consistency did what words never could. I noticed how my relationship with time changed. I stopped feeling rushed to resolve everything. Some questions didn't need immediate answers. Some feelings didn't need to be named right away. Patience became part of how I cared for myself. I also noticed how this reunion changed how I saw my own resilience. I had always thought resilience meant surviving alone. Now, I understood it could also mean allowing connection back in. That shift softened me in ways I didn't expect. I became more willing to ask for help. More willing to admit uncertainty. Those changes reached into other parts of my life. My marriage felt steadier. My friendships deeper. Not because I talked about my father constantly, but because I wasn't carrying the weight of an unresolved story anymore. The bus where we first sat beside each other continued its route every morning. Sometimes I rode it alone. Sometimes I smiled at the memory. That moment no longer felt unreal. It felt necessary. It happened when I was ready to hold the truth without being crushed by it. I don't know how our relationship will look years from now. I don't need to. What matters is this. We are no longer living inside a lie. We are no longer pretending absence was choice or silence was truth. We are two people who met again when time allowed. And we chose, carefully, to keep meeting. That choice continues to shape my days. Not with certainty, but with trust. And that trust, I have learned, is one of the strongest foundations a life can have. So I continue. Not trying to fix the past. Not trying to rush the future. Just standing in the present. Where my father is no longer a ghost. And I am no longer a child waiting in silence. Here. Now. Living forward. As I stand in this place now, I no longer feel like I am catching up to my own life. For so many years, I lived with the sense that something essential had been delayed. That I was always a few steps behind an invisible version of myself. That feeling has eased. Not because everything is resolved, but because nothing is hidden anymore. My father and I never reached a point where things felt finished. And I don't think we ever will. This story was never meant to end with certainty. It was meant to teach me how to live with truth. I learned that truth doesn't always arrive with clarity. Sometimes it arrives quietly, on a bus, beside a man who looks familiar in a way you can't explain right away. And when it does arrive, it doesn't fix your life. It asks you to participate in it differently. I participate differently now. I don't rush to conclusions. I don't assume silence means rejection. I don't believe disappearance is always abandonment. Those beliefs shaped me for a long time. Letting them go has been slow, but it has been worth it. My father remains careful with my heart. He doesn't ask for reassurance. He doesn't push for closeness. He lets closeness grow naturally, at its own pace. That patience feels like a kind of apology that doesn't need words. I have learned that forgiveness doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in moments, in answered calls, in kept promises, in the absence of pressure. Forgiveness grows when trust is given room. I give it room now. Not because I owe it, because I choose it. That choice has changed how I see myself. I am no longer defined by the story I was told as a child. I am defined by the story I am living now. A story with complexity, with unanswered questions, with moments of connection that are real, even when they are quiet. I no longer feel the need to explain my father to the world, or my past. They exist. They are part of me. That is enough. The bus route still runs every morning. People still sit beside strangers without knowing what they carry. Sometimes I look around and wonder how many lives are intersecting quietly, without spectacle. How many truths are waiting for the right moment. I don't search for signs anymore. I trust timing. What found me did so when I was ready to listen. And listening changed everything. I move forward now with steadier steps. With a heart that no longer feels unfinished. With the understanding that some stories don't close. They continue. Not loudly. Not perfectly. But honestly. And that honesty has given me something I didn't know I was missing. Peace. The kind that doesn't come from answers. The kind that comes from reality finally being allowed to speak. That is where I am now. Here. Living. Not haunted by the past. Not rushing the future. Simply present. And that, at last, feels like home. As I stay in that sense of home, I realize how much my definition of family has changed. For a long time, family felt like a story that ended too early. A sentence cut off in the middle. Now, it feels like a paragraph that continued later than expected. Not rewritten. Just resumed. My father and I don't try to pretend that time didn't pass. We acknowledge it quietly, in the way we speak, in the patience we show each other. There are things we will never share. Memories that belong only to the years apart. And that is all right. We don't need to own every chapter to belong in the same book. I no longer look at him searching for the man I lost. I see the man who is here. And seeing him as he is, instead of who I wished he had been, has freed both of us. There is less disappointment now. Less expectation. More acceptance. I've learned that acceptance does not mean approval of the past. It means choosing not to live inside it anymore. My father once said something that stayed with me. I used to think time would punish me enough, he said. But time doesn't punish. It just waits. I understood what he meant. Time waited until I was strong enough to hear the truth without breaking. Until he was brave enough to speak it without hiding. Until both of us could sit beside each other without needing to be rescued from the moment. That waiting mattered. I think about the bus ride often. Not with shock. With gratitude. It was ordinary. Crowded. Unremarkable to everyone else. And yet, it carried a truth that reshaped my life. That feels fitting somehow. Life rarely changes us through spectacle. It changes us through quiet recognition. I no longer fear the idea that people can disappear. I understand now that disappearance can be complicated. Sometimes it is cruelty. Sometimes it is fear. Knowing the difference doesn't excuse the pain. But it does soften it. I carry less anger now. Not because the past was justified. But because holding anger no longer protects me. What protects me now is clarity. I know where my story came from. I know why it bent the way it did. And I know that I am allowed to stand in the truth without collapsing under it. That knowledge has changed how I show up everywhere else. At work. At home. In friendships. I am less guarded. More present. I don't flinch at hard conversations the way I used to. I trust that silence doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes, it means thoughtfulness. I don't know how much time I will have with my father. None of us ever do. But I know that whatever time exists will be real. Not imagined. Not filled with ghosts. Just two people learning how to exist in the same truth. That is enough for me. This story didn't give me back my childhood. It gave me something different. Understanding. Understanding that life can take something away and return something else in its place. Not equal. Not fair. But meaningful. I walk forward now with that understanding. Not searching for closure. Not chasing answers. Just living with what is. And what is, finally, feels honest. That honesty doesn't make life simple, but it makes it solid. And for the first time in a long time, solid feels like everything. As that solidity became part of me, I stopped asking myself when this story would end. Some stories don't end. They change pace. They grow quieter. They become part of how you live instead of something you revisit. That is what happened here. My father and I didn't arrive at a place where everything made sense. We arrived at a place where sense was no longer required. What mattered was honesty. I learned how much energy I had spent trying to make the past understandable, trying to justify it, trying to organize it into something clean. Now, I let it be what it was. Messy, fear-driven, human. That acceptance freed space inside me. Space I didn't know had been missing. I noticed how differently I reacted to conflict now. When something felt uncertain, I didn't immediately assume the worst. I waited. I listened. I allowed time to do what it does best. Reveal what matters. My father noticed the change too. "You don't rush anymore," he said once. "I used to," I replied. "I was afraid if I didn't, things would disappear." He nodded slowly. "I lived most of my life afraid of that too," he said. That was one of the moments when I saw us clearly. Not as parent and child trapped in old roles, but as two people shaped by fear in different ways. Understanding that made compassion easier. Not forced. Natural. We never tried to recreate the family we lost. We let a new one exist in its place. Smaller. Quieter. But real. I stopped thinking of my childhood as incomplete. It was complete in the only way it could be. I grew into someone who could survive uncertainty, who could stand alone when necessary. Now, I was learning something new. How to stand with someone else without losing myself. That balance took time. There were moments when old habits returned. Moments when I wanted to pull away. I didn't shame myself for that. I recognized it as protection that no longer needed to be so sharp. And each time I stayed instead of leaving, trust grew a little stronger. I learned that healing is not about forgetting what hurt you. It is about no longer letting it decide everything. The bus ride that brought my father back into my life felt distant now. Not because it wasn't important, but because its work was done. It opened a door. What mattered was everything that came after. The patience. The listening. The willingness to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Those choices changed me more than the shock ever did. I no longer feel defined by the year 1995. It no longer sits in my life like a closed door. It is simply a chapter. One that ended abruptly, and one that was finally understood decades later. That understanding didn't give me answers to every question. It gave me peace with the questions themselves. I walk forward now without the weight of unfinished business. Without the ache of a mystery that never spoke. I know who my father is. I know who I am. And knowing both has grounded me in a way I didn't expect. This story doesn't ask for more words. It asks for living. Living with awareness. Living with honesty. Living with the quiet courage to stay present when the truth finally arrives. That is what I am doing now. Day by day. Without rushing. Without hiding. Just living. And that is where this story belongs. As I live with this truth longer, I notice how it has changed the way I remember my childhood. The memories haven't disappeared. They haven't softened completely. But they no longer feel like wounds. They feel like facts. I can look at old moments now without asking what was wrong with me. I can see the child I was with more kindness. A child who adapted. A child who learned to stay quiet because silence felt safer than questions. That child did the best she could with the story she was given. And I no longer blame her for believing it. My father sometimes talks about small things from before 1995. A day at the park. A song he used to hum while cooking. He never talks about them to make me nostalgic. He talks about them to show me that those moments were real. That I wasn't imagining closeness that never existed. That mattered more than I expected. For years, I wondered if I had made up the feeling of being loved. Now I know I hadn't. Love had been there. It just didn't have the chance to stay. That understanding settled something deep inside me. I stopped questioning my own memories. I stopped wondering if I had exaggerated the loss. Loss is not measured by how long something lasted. It is measured by how deeply it was felt. I allow myself to feel both sadness and relief now. Sadness for what never got to grow. Relief that what existed was real. Those feelings don't cancel each other out. They sit side by side. I've learned to let them. My father once said, "I thought disappearing would erase me." I looked at him and said, "It didn't." He nodded, slowly. "I see that now," he said. That moment stayed with me, because it reminded me that absence doesn't always erase impact. Sometimes, it makes it echo. I don't know if I would have chosen the truth if I had been given the option earlier. Maybe I needed years of distance to survive. Maybe I needed strength before I could hold complexity. I don't regret the timing anymore. I respect it. Some truths arrive when we are ready to carry them without breaking. This one did. My life feels less divided now. Less like there was a before and an after that could never touch. The past and present speak to each other now. Not loudly. Not constantly. But honestly. I no longer feel like something is missing. Something changed. And change, I've learned, is not the same as loss. It is movement. Forward. With awareness. With choice. With steadiness. And as I move through my days now, I don't look for signs or symbols. I don't wait for meaning to announce itself. I live. And sometimes, living quietly with the truth is the most meaningful thing you can do. As I move closer to that quiet conclusion, I notice how little I need the past to explain itself anymore. For years, I believed understanding meant knowing every detail. Every reason. Every fear that shaped what happened. Now I know that understanding can also mean acceptance. Not approval. Acceptance. Accepting that people make choices inside pressure. That fear can look like disappearance. That silence can be a form of protection, even when it hurts. I don't defend what happened. I simply see it clearly. And seeing clearly has given me space to breathe. My father and I no longer talk every week. Not because something went wrong. Because nothing needs proving anymore. When we do speak, it feels natural. Unforced. Like two people who know where they stand. Sometimes we sit together without talking much. Sometimes we laugh at something small. Those moments don't feel fragile now. They feel earned. I realized one day that I had stopped imagining worst-case endings. I no longer pictured him vanishing again. If he did, I knew I would survive it. That knowledge changed everything. It took away the fear that had shaped so many of my reactions. I wasn't holding on tightly anymore. I was standing on my own ground. That doesn't mean I stopped caring. It means I stopped clinging. There is a difference. I noticed how this affected other parts of my life. I became less anxious when people needed space. Less afraid when plans changed. Less quick to assume loss. I understood that connection does not have to be constant to be real. That lesson came late. But it came. I sometimes think about the bus ride and smile. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary. Life didn't announce anything that morning. It just placed the truth beside me and waited to see if I would look. I did. And looking didn't destroy me. It grounded me. That matters. I no longer feel like I am carrying an unfinished story. The story is ongoing. And that is enough. I don't rush it toward a conclusion. I let it live. I let it change. I let it be quiet when it wants to be quiet. That quiet no longer scares me. It feels familiar, comforting, like something that has finally settled where it belongs. I go on now without needing to define what this relationship is. It exists. That is enough. I am no longer waiting for explanations. I am no longer bracing for loss. I am living. And living, I've learned, does not require certainty. It requires presence. And that presence is something I have now. Fully. Steadily. Here. As that presence stays with me, I feel no urgency to rush toward a final understanding. Some understandings don't arrive as conclusions. They arrive as calm. I wake up now without that familiar tightness in my chest. The one I used to carry without knowing why. I move through my days without feeling like something is waiting to fall apart. That change is quiet, but it is real. My father and I have settled into something that feels honest. Not close in the way stories promise. Not distant in the way fear expects. Balanced. We talk when there is something to say. We sit quietly when there isn't. Neither of us fills the silence anymore. Silence no longer feels dangerous. It feels like space. I think about how much of my life I spent believing that unanswered questions defined me. That not knowing meant something was wrong with me. Now I know that not knowing is sometimes the most truthful place to stand. Because it leaves room for reality instead of imagination. I don't replay our first meeting on the bus as often anymore. When I do, it feels softer. Less shocking. More like the beginning of a long exhale. That moment didn't fix my life. It gave me permission to stop holding my breath. I understand now that my father didn't return to give me closure. He returned to give me truth. And truth doesn't always close doors. Sometimes it opens them just enough for air to come in. I no longer measure our relationship against what it could have been. I measure it against what it is. And what it is feels steady. That steadiness has changed how I see myself. I am no longer the child who lost her father in 1995. I am the woman who met him again decades later and chose not to turn away. That choice matters to me. It tells me who I am now. I am someone who can hold complexity without breaking. Someone who can allow the past to exist without letting it control the present. Someone who can sit beside a difficult truth and stay. I don't know what the next years will bring. I don't plan them too carefully. I have learned that life has its own timing. What I do know is this. I am not haunted anymore. I am not waiting for answers that never come. I am living with what is real. And what is real feels enough. This story didn't give me everything I lost. It gave me something different. Ground. Ground to stand on. Ground to move forward from. And as I continue living, I carry that ground with me. Quietly. Steadily. Without fear. Here. Now. Present. As I remain in this present, I no longer feel the need to search for meaning in every moment. Meaning has already settled. It lives in how my days feel now. Calmer. Less defensive. More open. I don't wake up thinking about what was taken from me anymore. I wake up thinking about what is here. That shift didn't happen all at once. It came slowly, through ordinary interactions. Through conversations that didn't try to fix anything. Through silences that didn't demand to be filled. My father and I share those silences now. They are not heavy. They are gentle. I notice how different my reactions are when something reminds me of the past. A date. A place. A memory. I don't tense the way I used to. I don't push it away. I let it pass through me, knowing it cannot undo what I have built. The past no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a chapter that has been read fully at last. I sometimes think about how close I came to never knowing the truth. How easily that bus ride could have been missed. If I had sat one row back. If I had taken a different route. But I don't dwell on that. Because what matters is not how it could have gone. What matters is how it did. It arrived when I was strong enough to meet it. My father once said, "I didn't know if you would want to see me." I told him the truth. I didn't know either. That honesty has guided everything since. We don't pretend this reunion was simple. We don't pretend it fixed everything. We acknowledge that it changed us. And that change continues. I am gentler with myself now. I don't criticize the way I adapted as a child. I thank that version of me for surviving with what she knew. I also allow myself to be different now. More open. Less guarded. That permission feels like a gift I gave myself. I have stopped carrying my story like something fragile. I carry it like something complete. Not perfect, but whole. I don't explain it to everyone. I don't need to. It lives in me, steady and quiet. I go on with my life. I take buses. I sit beside strangers. I move through crowds. And sometimes I wonder how many people around me are carrying truths they don't know yet. How many stories are waiting for the right moment to continue. I don't rush those moments anymore. I trust timing. Because timing brought me the truth when I could finally hold it. That is enough. I am no longer defined by what I lost. I am defined by what I chose to face. And choosing to face the truth without running, without hiding, has given me a sense of peace I never expected. That peace does not shout. It stays. Quietly. Steadily. As I move forward, I do so without fear of the past catching up to me. It already did. And instead of breaking me, it grounded me. This story doesn't need a dramatic ending. It ends the way it lived. Softly. Honestly. With a woman who finally feels at home in her own life. And that is enough. That is where I stay. As I stay in that place of quiet belonging, I realize something simple but important. I am no longer waiting for my life to explain itself to me. For years, I felt like I was standing in the middle of a sentence that never finished. Like something essential had been taken away before it could be understood. Now, the sentence feels complete. Not because every word is there, but because it finally makes sense. My father and I don't talk about the bus ride anymore. It did what it needed to do. It brought the truth into the open. What followed mattered more. The patience. The restraint. The decision, again and again, not to run from what felt uncomfortable. Those choices reshaped me more than the shock ever could. I notice how differently I hold myself now. My shoulders don't feel as tense. My thoughts don't race ahead to protect me from imagined loss. I am present in my own life in a way I never was before. That presence feels earned. I no longer need to define what my father means to me. He is part of my story. That is enough. Some days, that part feels close. Some days, it feels distant. Both are allowed. I don't judge the distance anymore. Distance does not mean failure. It means reality. I understand now that relationships don't heal us by filling every gap. They heal us by teaching us which gaps we can live with. I can live with these. I no longer feel the need to revisit old pain to prove it was real. It was real. And it shaped me. But it does not control me. I have stopped asking why this happened the way it did. That question has lost its power. What matters is how I live with what I know now. And I live with it honestly. I don't rush forgiveness. I don't withhold compassion. I let both exist when they are ready. I trust myself to know the difference. I trust myself now. That may be the quiet gift this story gave me. Not answers. Not certainty. But trust. Trust in my own ability to face the truth and keep going. I step onto buses. I walk through crowds. I live ordinary days. And I do so without the feeling that something essential is missing. The past no longer whispers unanswered questions. It speaks clearly now. And because it speaks clearly, it no longer needs to be loud. I carry forward with a steady heart. With a life that feels whole, even with its imperfections. With the knowledge that some truths arrive late, but they still arrive in time. This story doesn't end with closure in the way people expect. It ends with something quieter. Acceptance. Acceptance of what was. Acceptance of what is. Acceptance of what may never be. And in that acceptance, I find peace. That is where I am now. Here. Living. Present. No longer waiting. And that, finally, is enough. As I live inside that acceptance, I no longer feel the need to search for proof that I am okay. For a long time, I measured my healing by how little I felt. If it didn't hurt, I thought I was doing well. Now, I understand something different. Healing isn't about numbness. It's about balance. I can feel sadness without drowning in it. I can feel gratitude without pretending the past didn't hurt. Both can exist. And that coexistence feels mature, grounded, real. My father and I have settled into an unspoken understanding. We don't ask each other to be more than we are. We don't expect the relationship to make up for lost time. We simply allow it to be present. Sometimes that presence looks like conversation. Sometimes it looks like quiet. Neither feels wrong anymore. I've stopped wondering what other people would think if they knew the whole story. Their opinions don't change what this truth has done for me. This was never about explaining my life to others. It was about understanding it myself. I notice now how often I extend the same patience to others. When someone pulls away, I don't immediately assume rejection. When someone is quiet, I don't rush to fill the space. I allow people to arrive in their own time, just as the truth arrived in mine. That patience has softened my world. It has made room for nuance. I no longer believe stories are either happy or tragic. Most are both. This one certainly is. It holds grief for a childhood shaped by silence. And it holds relief for a truth that finally spoke. It holds loss. And it holds grounding. I don't feel the need to give this story a dramatic ending. Life didn't give it one. Life let it settle. And settling, I've learned, is sometimes the most profound form of change. I move forward now with less resistance. Less fear of what might resurface. The past already surfaced. And I survived it. More than that, I integrated it. It became part of me without tearing me apart. That knowledge has given me confidence. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that stays with you when no one is watching. I no longer see myself as someone defined by disappearance. I see myself as someone shaped by truth. Truth that arrived late, but arrived whole. I carry that truth with me into every ordinary day. Into work. Into conversations. Into moments of stillness. And those days feel different now. They feel grounded. They feel honest. They feel like mine. This story does not ask to be revisited over and over. It has found its place. It lives quietly inside me. Not as a wound. Not as a miracle. But as a reminder. That life can withhold answers for years. And then, when you are ready, place the truth gently beside you. On a bus. In silence. Without warning. And if you are willing to look at it, really look, it won't break you. It will steady you. That is what happened to me. And that is how I continue. Not chasing closure. Not running from memory. Just living. With clarity. With balance. With a heart that finally feels at home in its own story. As I stay in that steadiness, I notice how little I need to revisit the pain to prove it mattered. It mattered. That is settled now. I don't carry my past like evidence anymore. I carry it like experience. There is a difference. Experience doesn't ask to be defended. It simply exists. My father and I have learned how to share space without expectations. Sometimes we meet. Sometimes weeks pass. Neither feels like loss now. Time no longer feels like something that is slipping away from me. It feels like something I am moving with. That shift is subtle, but it has changed everything. I am more patient with unanswered messages, more forgiving of delayed responses, less afraid of pauses. Pauses no longer feel like abandonment. They feel like breathing room. I think often about the version of myself who believed her father died in 1995. That girl carried grief without language. She learned to survive without closure. I honor her now, not with sadness, with respect. She did not know the truth, but she lived as fully as she could anyway. And because of her, I was strong enough to meet the truth when it finally arrived. My father once said, "You grew up without me." I replied, "I grew up around your absence." That absence shaped me, but it did not ruin me. It taught me self-reliance. It taught me observation. It taught me how to listen between words. Those lessons stayed. And now, they work alongside something new. Understanding. Understanding that fear can silence people for decades. Understanding that love does not always look like staying. Understanding that truth, when it comes late, still has the power to set you down gently instead of tearing you apart. I no longer imagine alternative lives. I don't ask who I would have been if he had stayed. I am who I am. And I am at peace with that. The bus where everything began is still just a bus. Metal seats. Tired passengers. Ordinary routes. Nothing about it changed. Only I did. That feels important. Life did not rearrange itself for my story. My story rearranged how I saw life. I move through days now without the ache of something unfinished. When I think of my father, I don't feel the sharp edge of loss. I feel presence. Not constant. Not dramatic. But real. And when I think of myself, I no longer feel like a child left behind. I feel like someone who faced the truth and stayed standing. That matters to me more than any apology ever could. This story has given me no grand reward. No perfect ending. It gave me something better. Ground. Ground beneath my feet. Ground strong enough to stand on without fear of collapse. I walk forward with that ground under me now. Quietly. Without needing to look back every few steps. The past is not chasing me anymore. It is walking beside me, understood at last. And I am no longer afraid of that. I live. I choose. I continue. Not because everything makes sense, but because it doesn't need to anymore. And that, finally, is enough. As I carry that sense of enoughness with me, I no longer feel the urge to hurry toward anything else. I don't need the future to arrive faster. I don't need the past to explain itself again. What I have now feels steady. I notice how differently I respond to quiet moments. They no longer make me restless. They no longer feel like gaps that need filling. They feel like space I'm allowed to stand in. My father and I exist within that space now. We don't lean on each other heavily. We don't avoid each other either. We meet where we are. That middle ground has become familiar. I think about how much fear once lived inside me without a name. Fear of being left. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that silence always meant loss. Those fears don't control me anymore. They still visit sometimes. But they don't stay. I recognize them for what they are: old signals from a story that has already changed. I don't fight them. I let them pass. I've learned that peace is not the absence of difficult thoughts. It is the ability to let them come and go without letting them decide who you are. That ability grew slowly. Through conversations that didn't rush. Through silences that didn't threaten. Through truth that arrived without demanding forgiveness. I am grateful for that pace. Anything faster might have broken me. My father once said, "I was afraid you'd hate me." I told him, "I was afraid you never cared." Both of those fears lived quietly for years. Neither turned out to be true in the way we imagined. Fear, I've learned, tells convincing stories. Truth speaks more softly. But when you listen closely, it stays. I don't know how long this chapter will last. Life has taught me not to assume permanence. What I know is this. I am no longer waiting for something to fix me. Nothing needs fixing. Something needed understanding. And that understanding has arrived. I step onto buses now without scanning faces. I sit beside strangers without wondering who they might be. That day was singular. It does not need to repeat itself to matter. It did its work. It brought the truth into my life and trusted me to live with it. I have done that. Not perfectly, but honestly. I continue my days with less weight, with fewer defenses, with a heart that does not close as quickly as it once did. That is not something I take lightly. It is the result of facing something I once thought would undo me, and discovering it didn't. It grounded me. I no longer define myself by what I lost or what I missed. I define myself by what I chose to face. And I chose to face the truth when it sat beside me on a bus, quiet and waiting. That choice continues to shape me. Every ordinary day. In ways I don't need to announce. In ways that feel deeply mine. And as I move forward, I do so without fear of what might resurface. The hardest truth already did. And I am still here. Standing. Living. Enough. As I reach this place now, I feel the story naturally slowing on its own. Not because there is nothing left to say, but because everything important has already been felt. I don't wake up anymore with the sense that something is unfinished. That feeling used to follow me everywhere, quietly shaping my choices. Now, it has loosened its hold. My father and I have not become close in the way people imagine reunions should be. There are no dramatic scenes. No sudden transformations. What we have is simpler. We acknowledge each other's presence in the world. We check in. We show care. We respect distance when it appears. That respect has become the foundation of whatever this relationship is. I no longer ask myself what role he should play in my life. Roles belong to the past. What matters is reality. And the reality is this. He exists. I exist. We know the truth now. That knowledge has given me a sense of grounding I never expected. I notice how I stand differently in my own life. I don't apologize as often for taking up space. I don't shrink myself to avoid disappointment. I understand now that I was never abandoned because I wasn't enough. I was separated by fear that didn't belong to me. Letting go of that belief has been one of the quietest, most powerful shifts I've ever made. I don't carry resentment anymore. Not because the past was fair, but because resentment no longer protects me. What protects me now is clarity. I see what happened. I see who was involved. I see the limits of what could be done at the time. And I see myself clearly too. A child who adapted. An adult who survived. A person who chose to face the truth instead of turning away. That choice matters to me. It tells me who I am now. I am someone who can sit beside discomfort without needing to escape. Someone who can allow complexity without demanding it be simplified. Someone who understands that healing is not loud. It is steady. The bus ride that started all of this no longer feels like a shock. It feels like a moment of alignment. Everything was ready. I was ready. If it had happened earlier, I might have broken under it. If it had happened later, I might have missed it entirely. It happened when it needed to. That timing feels right. I don't look for signs anymore. I don't wait for life to explain itself. I trust that when something important needs to surface, it will. And I trust myself to meet it when it does. My father and I may continue like this for years. Or life may change again. Either way, I am no longer afraid of what comes next. The hardest truth already arrived. It sat beside me quietly, and instead of destroying me, it gave me back something I didn't know I had lost. My sense of wholeness. Not because everything was repaired, but because everything was finally named. I move forward now with that wholeness inside me. Into ordinary days. Into small moments. Into quiet routines. I take buses. I sit beside strangers. I live my life. And I do so without the weight of a lie shaping my steps. This story does not end with certainty. It ends with steadiness. With a woman who knows where she stands. With a past that no longer hides in shadows. With a present that feels honest enough to rest in. That is where I am now. Here. Grounded. Living forward. And that is enough. As I stay in this grounded place, I don't feel the need to hold on to the story anymore. It no longer needs my attention to stay real. It has done its work. For so many years, my life felt like it was shaped by an absence I couldn't name. A quiet gap that influenced how close I stood to people. How much I trusted silence. How carefully I guarded my heart. Now, that gap has a name. And once something has a name, it stops controlling you from the shadows. My father and I don't speak often about what happened anymore. We don't need to. The truth doesn't require constant repetition to stay true. It lives between us, understood. Sometimes we talk about small things. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Neither feels wrong. I've learned that peace is not built from constant reassurance. It's built from knowing where you stand, even when nothing is being said. I don't wonder anymore if he'll disappear again. If he does, I know I will survive it. That knowledge is not cold. It's empowering. It means I no longer live in fear of loss. I live with awareness. I look back at my life before that bus ride with compassion. For the child who accepted silence because she didn't know there was another option. For the adult who built strength out of unanswered questions. They did not fail. They adapted. And now, they are no longer alone inside the story. The truth didn't give me back what I lost. It gave me perspective. It showed me that my life was never built on weakness. It was built on resilience. Quiet, uncelebrated resilience. I carry that forward now. Not as pride. As steadiness. I no longer need the past to explain itself again. It has already spoken. And I listened. That listening changed me. I move through my days with less fear of being left behind. With less urgency to hold things tightly. With more trust in my ability to stand, even when life shifts unexpectedly. I still ride buses. I still sit beside strangers. But I no longer scan the world for what might undo me. What needed to arrive already did. It arrived quietly. It sat beside me. And it gave me back my sense of self. This story doesn't end with reunion or loss. It ends with clarity. With a woman who understands her past without being trapped inside it. With a life that no longer feels interrupted. Just continuing. Steadily. Honestly. Forward. That is where this story ends. Not with answers shouted aloud. But with peace that stays.